Hi, everybody. How are we doing this evening? Good. I would like to thank you, Ben, for providing the wonderful music from Deems Tsutakawa. And I would like to also acknowledge Northwest Asian Weekly Foundation for assisting in the publishing of this film before we commence the event. So yeah, thank you all for coming out tonight. My name, for the premiere of Writing on the Wall, my name is Brooklyn Hose. I'm a freshman at UW Seattle. I'm going into my sophomore year, so I just finished my freshman year. I'm an intern for the OCA Pacific Advocates of Greater Seattle. On our program, you will also find two other student-led programs for OCA GS and the debut of our comic novella in a yellow tone on July 25th, in the Walk of Wellness on July 31st. To begin our program, we will start with the story of Seattle, the Chinatown International District Murals, a brief documentary from the Northwest Asian Weekly Foundation that details events from the pandemic to anti-Asian hate, protests against police brutality, vandalism, and ultimately triumph when a community comes together. Everyone, please enjoy the story of Seattle Chinatown International District Murals. And thank you.
The CID, Chinatown International District, a vibrant hub of Seattle's Asian American communities, where you'll find the oldest Chinese and Japanese restaurants in the city, dim sum, noodle houses, hot pot, barbecue, Vietnamese, Thai, Cambodian, Korean, Filipino cuisine, and even pizza. The CID is a culinary and cultural delight. But in 2020, the community's vibrancy began to dull when people stopped coming to the CID due to the racial stigma over coronavirus against Asian-related businesses. Restaurants told the Northwest Asian Weekly of drastic drops in the number of customers. 30 family associations and community organizations canceled their Lunar New Year celebrations, each banquet with 200 to 500 people, and Dragon Fest, one of the biggest CID events, was canceled. In March, the governor announced the closure of restaurants and bars, followed by a statewide order requiring everyone to stay home. Businesses started limiting hours and laying off staff. And just before restaurants could reopen for dine-in service, protests over the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis broke out all across the country. In Seattle, splinter groups spilled into the CID, smashing storefront after storefront, breaking windows, doors. Businesses were vandalized and looted. A community already suffering was hit with another devastating blow. Everywhere you looked, you saw businesses boarded up with plywood. The mayor ordered Seattle Public Utilities to help board up 200 storefronts, providing labor and materials for businesses. The once vibrant CID looked like a blighted ghost town. Then Che Seon, a local artist, put out an SOS. He asked other artists to volunteer their time and talent in a CID mural party. Over several days, more than 100 volunteers would show up in the CID, Asian and Black artists, artists from all walks of life, and they created something beautiful out of the ugly storefronts.
And many volunteers came to protect the businesses by putting up boards. They came the next day after that first major damage.
The move was likely inspired by Kiyoki Solvano, another artist, 3 months prior. Kiyoki was driving by Jade Garden restaurant and noticed construction workers boarding up windows. He asked the owner, Eric Chan, if they were going out of business and found out the restaurant had been vandalized. Kiyoki posted on social media for other artists to come out and paint murals, and within 30 minutes, he got 5 volunteers. Kiyoki started a movement with that mural, and months later, after the riots against police brutality,
The protected businesses now had one of the largest art collections that are a beautiful gesture of solidarity with the CID. The Northwest Asian Weekly has never seen anything like this in the entire CID history.
it was an unprecedented show of support from the community, proving that we are in this together, CID strong. while murals turned up in other parts of the city like Pioneer Square and Capitol Hill. The CID murals demonstrated not only support for Black Lives Matter, it displayed messages of Asians supporting Blacks and multiculturalism. It was unusual for businesses in the CID to have that messaging. It was a collaboration with the Black community and a commitment to solidarity. We at the Northwest Asian Weekly felt compelled to highlight this event and the show of solidarity with Black Lives Matter. With the CID turned into an art gallery, we held a contest to honor the works of arts and the people behind it.
Right now, we wanted to show our support in the Asian community, where we stand, and showing solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement right now, as well as kind of, the stuff with COVID going on right now, and sharing some positive words that, could relate to all of those things combined.
Tori Kirihara's creation took first place in the People's Choice Award and also an honorable mention as the most empowering mural. Carlos Ruiz said he just wanted to spread art and love in some pretty hard times. He created this fun mural showing all the delicious food you can eat at Jade Garden.
Important to come together as a community, and just being a minority out here and working with Jade Garden, who also were minorities, and just working out here, working together and showing love towards each other is very important.
Adding more color to the CID was this mural by Richard Reynolds.
I was inspired to do this for several reasons. I lived in the International District for 7 years, and it's perhaps my favorite place on planet Earth. And I had a long-standing relationship as a patron with Phnom Penh Noodle House, and I felt honored and very lucky to have been able to do their mural. And as for imagery, I was inspired very much by a recent trip to Cambodia that my partner June Sekaguchi and I did. Spent a lot of time in Angkor Wat, soaking in Khmer tradition and inspirations. And in general, the piece was inspired by a longstanding love of mural work, particularly Mexican muralists and American comics. So I felt very happy and honored to be able to do that particular mural.
And the first place winner in our contest was this massive mural at the Wing Luke Museum in collaboration with artist Moses Sun.
The whole process was pretty magical. It felt like something that was meant to be. It just all kind of flowed together. I drew with chalk and worked from my drawing, and then improvised from my actual mock-up, and it all just flowed. And so I really felt like there was a intersection of so many different things, and felt like the ancestors were working overtime to make sure this happened.
The most important things that we wanted to come out of it was for us to show our solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement and with the Black community. And I think as well, on top of that, we wanted to also honor those community members who have been doing that work in working in solidarity and coalition building historically.
Even though some of the murals are gone now, the CID remains united in community, purpose, and in solidarity with the Black, Indigenous people, and people of all color.
Hello? Okay, so sorry about that. What a wonderful documentary. Thank you so much, Northwest Asian Weekly, for sharing your wonderful documentary. Before we premiere our feature, Writing on the Walls, I would like to acknowledge the help and sponsorship of several organizations, including the OCA Asian Pacific Advocates of Greater Seattle, the American Ethnic Studies Department at University of Washington, the Wing Luke Museum, and the UW Chinese Students Association, Northwest Asian Weekly Foundation, and most of all, For Culture, for providing the funds for this student-produced documentary.
I'm Dawn, 31, mother, second generation Vietnamese American, born and raised in South Seattle. I work at the Wing Luke Museum as the senior tour manager. Mom and dad came over as refugees in the late 1980s. I have two brothers. I'm middle daughter. Growing up in Burien elementary school, oftentimes I was the only Vietnamese American student in the class. That would continue into high school, eventually kind of pushed my Vietnamese heritage away. It wouldn't be until going to the University of Washington, taking American Ethnic Studies classes, learning more about myself that helped me find where I belonged. I was hoping to go to art school, but of course my family was like, it's not a feasible direction to go into. And I saw a class about contemporary problems for Asian Americans, and taking that course helped me connect. I majored in American Ethnic Studies and focused on Asian American Studies. A handful of people I'm still connected to today. And after I found that place, I realized that I wanted to continue in education, but really advocate for diversity and representation. I just started out part-time at the museum, helping to lead tours. And then once I got in, they just can't kick me out. I helped to oversee the education guides in the Education and Tours department, working at the museum for now more than 10 years. It's a mixture of all of the things that I really built myself on. So my identity, you have the art, of course, that we've got in some of the exhibitions, but really being able to share the history and then also see myself included in it. I moved out of Burien approximately 2 years ago. That was because I got pregnant. I actually met my partner, Vincent, who was also a student in the psychology, but then also went into American Ethnic Studies as well. For the both of us, we really have a love for the neighborhood in Seattle. That's where we hung out a lot, and definitely wanted to move closer to the Chinatown neighborhood. I just wanted for my son a different kind of experience. Just being able to walk around in a neighborhood where you can see that there are a lot of folks who look like you. When the news of COVID-19 came out, then Lunar New Year happening around that time, late January, and these ideas that it was around eating bats, I just knew that it was going to be stereotypes against anyone who looked Asian, just so much xenophobia. It was around February, just taking a walk with my son in his stroller through downtown Seattle. The city was just starting to get boarded up. We were just walking, and there were some teenage kids, white, that were walking the opposite direction from us. And it was just them just doing exaggerated coughing. And then laughing. Side glance. Nothing hostile. But you knew the intention was there. And that was it. That was it. It's dumb crying thinking about it, but there was so much that could have happened. Sorry. There was so much that I wanted to do in the time that passed. I could have taken some kind of action to at least yell something back, but just seeing what happens in police encounters when it comes to young white men and older people of color. We know that the outcome isn't good. So I couldn't, risk anything happening to my partner, who would be stereotyped as a darker skinned male who would be seen as a threat to these young boys kind of thing. And then there's my son. So we just kind of kept on walking. That was before a mandate to wear face masks. So we were looking like the odd ones out with the masks. And then my son, he's in his stroller and we have like a plastic cover. And that was the only time we got that experience, but it was enough. I've just been staying home, stay out of it. I felt like when it came to the murals, I think it's fascinating because the last time that the community was ever boarded up was during the 1940s when Japanese Americans were put into incarceration camps. I talk about that a lot at the museum, and seeing the photographs of places being boarded up, everything looked like, a ghost town. This is the stuff that's repeating again.
What I said the other night, there's never been anything where they have so many names. I could give you 19 or 20 names for that, right? It's got all different names. Wuhan. Wuhan was catching on. Coronavirus, right? Kung flu, yeah. Kung flu.
Trump calling the coronavirus the Kung flu, China flu, Wuhan virus. It's just a repeating of everything that we've seen across history. It's really depressing that we haven't moved forward. I think it started out with Jade Garden being the first place that got the murals. But over time, right, there was Skipta and S. who were also involved with helping to just board up the different restaurants and businesses in the neighborhood. Thinking back on the murals, you had a theme of definitely Black Lives Matter. You had Asians for Black Lives too. Some of them were just kind of painted around the theme of the restaurants that they had boarded up. We had cute food stuff and just letting people know that these spaces are still open. At first seeing it, I was it made me feel happy to see it because it wasn't something that you'd seen before. Anti-Blackness is something that is prevalent in Asian American communities. The community in itself is made up of a lot of different people. You have elders, you have children, you have adults, and they all come with different perspectives and experiences. And the more they educate themselves or learn more about where Asian and Black history collides and intersects. If you take a look at Seattle's history around redlining, right? Restrictive covenants in Seattle, who was allowed to live where according to what they looked like. For those communities who were marginalized, having to live in those spaces, the worst places in Seattle, they had to make the best of it, and their relations together were just fine. The Black and Tan Club, right? 12th and Jackson. That is historically where today is Little Saigon. It was once Japantown, heading towards the Central District. That was a place where it wasn't just Black folks who were hanging out, but all of the other communities who were being marginalized. Those were spaces that were open and welcome to them. Those communities were able to get along a lot better with each other. You can kind of see then what relations were like for communities of color in Seattle. New immigrants coming into the United States, what is the first thing that they're sold? That's the idea of this American dream. If you work hard enough, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. When you look at the rules that are put into place when these new immigrants come, it's stacked up against them and plays into model minority stereotype. Model minority is something that's used to pit the different communities of color against each other. You're elevating one in particular, the Asian community, right? And saying that, hey, look at the rest of these ethnic communities, these other Black and brown groups. They've been here longer than these Asian ones have. Now, why can't the rest of them pick themselves up by their bootstraps and make it happen instead of sitting around and, waiting for people to take care of them? If you break it down amongst the different Asian ethnic groups, not everyone's doing all the same either. The different Asian groups came into the United States. Under what guise they came under, if they're coming in as refugees, right? That's a completely different entryway into the United States than someone who comes highly educated with lots of skills to get them into a good job and taking care of their families. So international students, it's completely different playing level and field. This is a lot of stuff to explain, but that model minority stereotype, it's a myth. Looking at the murals today, I think the message is clear. Folks are trying to get out that Black lives matter, and the people in this community, the people who are painting it, the artists, folks here, they're trying to say that they're standing behind it. It's important saying it because it wasn't something that was said when I was growing up. So I think this is a time to make it known so that we don't forget. There's hope. We're living in really weird times, and it's kind of silly because I remember as an undergrad, learning about the civil rights movement and being like, wow, these people, they're so brave, to stand up for what they believe in. And I remember saying things like, oh geez, I wish I could be living in that time so I can be brave too and do like they did, But the funny thing is, I don't have to wish that because we're living in that time right now. This is our reality. People need to make their choice and decide on where they stand. For our community, I think it's clear. It's painted on the walls. Black lives do matter. I really like the one that was in Canton Alley, the one that we did at the museum, just because it was a really great example of the various leaders amongst BIPOC communities. So you had like Donnie Chin, Betty Luke, Wing Luke, of course. I just love that cross-community cultural representation of what kind of leadership has been seen across the board in the Chinatown International District. There's just so many different murals. They all come with their different styles. Some of them I like for their simplicity. So that kind of like pharmacy that's right next door to Tai Tung, where it's like just blue and white hues. It makes me think of like the jade kind of porcelain of a certain kind of, you know, dynasty area where everything was only white and blue, and that was cute. I think it is Ho Ho Seafood Restaurant that actually built like hinges on their boards. So whenever their restaurant is open, they just flip it down like a window. So it's really cool to see the different styles and just the cleverness behind a lot of the pieces too, and how it operates with the businesses that they are protecting. It's not just the businesses that painted them. It's actually a collaboration between the business owners and the mural artists. It's a beautiful collaboration between the two. What you're finding there on the surface of all of those paintings then are the messages that the local community members really want to get across the neighborhood. For me, I see themes of just that resiliency. You're building on something that might have happened that was negative, but making it into something positive. That's kind of what I'm seeing with the murals in the neighborhood. In this hard time that we're in, we're gonna see it through. Even though our neighborhood is taking on a different look because of the xenophobia, because of attacks, white supremacy out there, we're gonna protect our spaces but still see the beauty in it.
What a wonderful documentary. Thank you. Thank you, Dawn, Han, and all the people involved with Writing on the Wall. I would now like to invite our panelists, Dawn, who we all saw in the film, Han Eckelberg, the director of Writing on the Wall, and Kiyoki Silvano, the person who came up with the idea of the murals, and like Dawn, a resident of the Chinatown International District, for a Q&A. Okay. Before we start, is there any questions in the audience for any of the panelists? Don't be shy. All right. Okay, Han, we'll start with you. How did you decide to tell the story?
Test, test. What you saw today on the screen was just a personification of Dawn's storytelling. So many of the decisions that went behind the film was just with the community. For me, as I guess the director and the editor, I didn't put too much of my own style into it, but what I wanted to be was a collaborative piece So what you saw in the credits with Dawn's storytelling, we were tapping in with community. So it was the photos provided by Wing Luke. It was also the line dance team, Mach Phi. Also contacted my friends for the drone shots, the music, and we had Deems Tsutakawa's music in there too. So I wanted that to be like a key point when watching this film. It was all based within community.
And I feel like you could definitely see that throughout the film, how tied it was with the community. Second question that we have for you, what was the greatest challenge to completing the project?
The greatest challenge to complete the project, I think it's just timing in school, because that was online, Zoom University. So the biggest issue was trying to find time to actually make the project kind of happen. And I think also with schedules and, COVID-19 too, to find ways to actually hello? I think to creatively problem solve with those type of challenges kind of presented to you. And I think we did a really great job. So I think that's the hardest part, was timing and also just the given circumstances.
All right, perfect. I guess anyone thinking of any questions up in the audience? Okay, yeah.
That's a really great question. Thank you for asking that. The museum definitely has been able to select a number of the murals that were painted and are being preserved at the museum. So if you haven't visited, I'm doing a plug, right? If you haven't visited the Wing Luke Museum recently, we are open Thursday through Saturday now, and we do have an exhibit about COVID-19. We titled it Community Spread, so you can actually see a little bit of them at the museum.
Okay, yeah. Perfect, good to know. Any other questions in the audience? No? All right. Oh, right there, right there. Yes.
I'll speak up on that. I think there was some skepticism at first from business owners, just because they don't know the artists that are putting the murals on. I know when we did Jay Garden, for example, artists, they paint through the lens of their artistry or what they feel is art, which has a very broad definition to a lot of different artists. So they may not really understand cultural representation or cultural sensitivity. They're just looking through the lens of their artistry. And so as an educator, it almost became like a teaching moment for the artists themselves. I had one particular artist, for example, that they were painting in the stylization of some Japanese art that they have, cartoon characters, but painting that cartoon character on Jay Garden could be interpreted as something very, very culturally insensitive. Other things, like for example, that some of the business owners were really worried about, because I think it was, I forgot what year it was. I think it was was it the year of the rat that year? What year? Yeah, year of the rat. And so some of the business owners were really worried that some of the artists would paint a rat, because in giving respect to Lunar New Year and the Year of the Rat, and they didn't want people who were visitors to the International District to identify that as like food, or stereotypically that people would say that, oh, this is what they're eating. As a matter of fact, Eric Chen, when we first did the mural, and the story came out, there was people opening up the door and yelling in the door, "Stop making bat soup and stop making rat soup." A lot of really derogatory statements that led to another bigger thing where he felt like he had to do a additional story because somebody tried to shut down the restaurant by through some racialized attacks on the restaurant itself. So, yes, there was to answer. That's a long-winded answer to your question. So there was a lot of different things that were going on in terms of why owners were hesitant. But after the story broke, and there was that second wave of murals, a lot of the business owners were already then understood why it was necessary and the mission of why we were even like artists were painting in the first place. So that story changed over time and evolved.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I can talk about my experience with anti-blackness, and not only in my community but my family as well. And my wife is black, and there has been some challenges with my family because of my wife being black. But I can say that when it came to the artist painting and saying painting the pictures on the walls, it became a part of the larger message when it came about Black Lives Matter, because I was at Hinghey Park where that first demonstration took place, and I knew just from seeing the faces that not the faces, but I think and I don't know if it was absolutely true, but when I see everybody dressed in black, like from head down, and they had their faces covered, I'm already thinking that these are they didn't have like good intentions once we went into downtown. And it started, and they were yelling at each other saying no, because it started getting tenuous at the park. And as they were leaving, there were some organizers that were yelling at other demonstrators that no, this is not where we start this. We're going to start this downtown. Chinatown is a space where it's meant to be peaceful, and so I followed that demonstration all the way to, I believe, Marion and 4th, where Amazon Go is, and that's when it turned really violent. Like that's when I first started taking pictures of people breaking windows and jumping on cars, and as well as then I had tear gas that was just that was getting shot out. And taking pictures of people crying because of the tear gas. I mean, it was just very, very, it was just a very tense moment and intense moment. And I knew at that point that because there was a police line, that they would drive that crowd right back into Chinatown. And what I feared actually happened, and it went from something that I don't know if it was intentionally peaceful, but it was peaceful in Chinatown at least. And I knew that once it came back to Chinatown, that's when we were going to have some issues, because that anger and that animosity that they were feeling downtown was going to impact Chinatown, because they had nowhere else to express their anger. And that's when we started seeing the windows broken out of storefronts and other things. So I know it's a long, to answer your question, I don't really know what changed the minds of business owners and being able to provide that messaging. But I certainly think it's because there were a lot of younger generation that have had that experience with other communities and be able to explain it to elders and saying this is why it's necessary for us to support Black Lives Matter, not only for us, but to express solidarity for all the different communities that's involved. Yes, absolutely.
Just to kind of tag along with that as well, thinking about how there's different understandings from the different generations, what I want to say personally is that I feel like for the younger generation now, there's a lot more resources to help with the language barriers that maybe they didn't have the words to talk about Black Lives Matter, or like just the specific vocabulary words that you might use that you need in your home family ancestral language that you might not have. There's
more resources floating around, like social media, that I've been, seeing, that even I was able to learn from. Being second generation Vietnamese American, there's so many words that I don't know because I'm at such a elementary speaking level, but seeing the resources that were being passed around, and folks just actively really trying to like teach their elders or their parents, or their aunts and uncles and stuff like that. I feel like that's a difference, that a resource that I didn't have growing up. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with the the opening up of the state, and with the boards kind of progressively coming down, I could just tell you, when the boards were up, that was one of the things I looked forward to coming down to Chinatown, because it felt like each day there was a new art piece being like installed. Because like my kung fu team, we still practice, and we go around, we patrol sometimes in Chinatown, we see like all these amazing murals. And I think as they get taken down, it's nice, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I guess the time has passed, and now we have like these pictures, our selfies, what we documented in the film to kind of remember this moment. Again, I don't think that, the reason why they were boarded up is also to protect the businesses, but it was also like, I guess, a beautification. They took something that was used to protect like the windows, the doors, and they made something that was like beautiful, just like presentable, something that displayed the businesses, the purpose of the business. And that was really cool to see. And you see like the creativity, as Don mentioned, between the business owners and the artists coming through. I think it's a good step. I think it's nice to see like, we're opening back up. But at the same time, I think what's funny, last week I saw another person not doing boards, painting on art, but they were painting on the brick, like masonry walls. They started doing chalk, and it says, "Welcome to CID." And I think we're moving on to like making more art in Chinatown, but in a different way.
To that, I want to say it definitely is a symbolic thing that the boards are coming down. The message that I would want to say in response to that is that just because we're going back to normal, right, whatever that means, or these things are going down and we might not remember them as collectively as we did before, it's something that we can't forget, right? As we continue to move forward, this is a experience that we shared with the COVID pandemic, but then also Black Lives Matter. It's just like in the video, where I say, if we can recognize where our histories intersect and collide, that's what we can't forget moving forward.
For me, really, it's just a symbol of, now that the boards are starting to come down, just a symbol of normalcy, and just even getting the shots. It was just a sense of liberation for me. I'm teaching and living, and I love my family. I love my kids and my wife, but being in a year of quarantine in the home with them for over a year, and they were my only company and my only conversation that I could have with it, just. So quite honestly, that project with Jay Garden allowed me a chance to I don't want to say freedom. It gave me a feeling of just like escape from the heaviness of having to do, like, my workspace and my home space became the same thing. And I never let, I mean, it was just, for me, I'm very community driven. And so that whole year, I actually was just kind of living in a sense of depression because of that. And so my intention with the Jay Garden project wasn't necessarily about starting this bigger thing that it became. It just was, I wanted to show the community that once you board up a building, everybody assumes that it's closed. Number one. Number two, once you board up a building, then it invites other, like, graffiti artists who are just painting on the walls without permission or asking for permission to do that. and not even a purpose about the message. The message is about them and their name when they're throwing up the graffiti art, right? And so I wanted to make sure, and I wasn't even a patron of Jay Garden. I knew Eric Chen through the University of Washington, but my home restaurant has been Honey Court. I've been going there since I'm 12, and now I'm almost 50, and that's just our space. Like I'm very accustomed to the same thing, the same rhythm, and so I just felt that it was just the right thing to do, was just to put a call out for artists, because it was a blank canvas, and they delivered in 30 minutes. They came through and they said, yes, we'll do it. And then that like 2 days later, we were painting the mural, and that allowed just an escape for me, and felt like I was doing something that was worthy for the community, and that people were proud of. And then next thing I know, there was all of a sudden there was just a big movement to paint all the different buildings in Chinatown. So I was just really, really pleased with that. And you know, I feel lucky and very fortunate to be a part of something that became so big. But it's just, for me, it was just, the only feeling that I get is just I was able to do something for Chinatown. I was able to do something for the International District, and give it space for people to then become an artist walk, a boardwalk, to just see art and just drive people to the community just to see the art itself, and then it get exposed to the different restaurants and the other things, the businesses that are there. And I think in the one of the news articles, that I think it was very a vital decision. Well, what can we do now? And I told them, just patronize the businesses in Chinatown. That's the most important thing that they could do. And unfortunately, a lot of those businesses are gone, but there are others that are really still continue to thrive to this day.
All right, perfect. Yeah, you can go ahead.
I can start that. um, Moving forward, I think, as I mentioned before, moving to different avenues of art, not only in the boardwalks, but like on the bricks with videos, even more with social media posts. I think social media just was such a huge way to connect now, especially on Instagram. You see something, like, as Don mentioned, like the language barrier, how to pronounce this and that in your own native tongue. And I feel like as the younger generation starts sharing and becoming much more aware and putting stuff on our stories, I think that also produces relevant art to the movement. I think that's how we go forward.
I think for me, it's work that's never done. So as when we're thinking about moving forward, it's just something that you have to keep on doing. My work at the Wing Luke Museum as senior tour manager is centered around education. So every day, visitors are coming on in. School groups we're eventually going to see come on in. You know, we just opened up doing neighborhood tours this weekend. So it's that conversation, keeping those conversations going, that dialogue, and doing that work, educating folks, planting those seeds. It's an everyday thing. So for me, it's just hyper focus on not forgetting what happened, what we saw in these, what we saw in 2020. Just to take what we saw and what we learned and to keep it moving forward and to not forget, right? That's just what I do at the museum. And for me, that's that's what I do. So that was kind of long-winded answer, but you just can't stop.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm a photographer, and I've been doing photography for the last 16 years. So the art doesn't stop. But the difference is that there's a lot of artists, like, for example, Gator, who was one of the initial artists that painted over at Jay Garden. He was already laid off from work because of COVID, and he decided he just answered the call to paint for free. And Rick Clue, another artist, I don't know if he's another artist, Chinese American artist here in Seattle, and he was painting for free. But all these artists were also impacted by COVID. Like he was also, Rick was laid off from his work, and he was trying to find gainful employment or finding jobs that paid. And fortunately, because of the art and the murals that people did, they found paying jobs where they were able to continue their profession because of what they participated in Chinatown, which I think was the greatest agenda about that. We were helping people find ways to keep employed through this crisis. And so for me, my contract ended as a teacher 3 weeks ago, but my art as a photographer has really picked up because of the visibility that my work in Chinatown provided. And so it's very organic the way that it happened. Like I said, I'd never envisioned this to be the thing that it was going to be, with documentaries and news articles and where do we go from here in terms of solidarity? My work has always been about solidarity. I think the biggest misconception is that these are different ethnic groups do not work together. The most common theme I've heard when it came to Black Lives Matter from some people, and even some close friends of mine, is that Asians do not support Black Lives Matter. They don't work with the Black community. And I said, well, then you don't really understand the history of JACL and the Black Panther Party working and collaborating with other ethnicities, and the San Francisco State University and the first strike there to start creating programs like American Ethnic Studies and other things. So solidarity will continue. It's a work in progress. It's an evolution, and evolution isn't instantaneous. It happens over time, very slowly. So. 1968, yes. We appreciate your work. We appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the honor is mine. I mean, the honor is mine. I mean, because the thing that people don't understand is that there are so many people who don't know how to cook at home or do not have the ability to cook at home. So if these restaurants disappear, where will they eat? And that's the other thing too, is that it's just a very important part and function of how we need to survive. And that's one of the pieces that I think people were forgetting, is that how important just all these different industries that we are dependent on, from the supply chain and our agriculturalists who are growing all the goods to deliver onto the table, like they're all part of it. And we're starting to see now like the outcome of how these industries have impacted our price point for what we're purchasing now, because the supplies aren't there. I mean, the demand is there, but the supply chain has been disrupted because we didn't have enough employees to grow or manufacture and deliver all these different goods. I mean, there was definitely there were shortages of paper, and there were shortages of shrimp, and there was so there's so many different things that impacted everything. But the fact that the restaurants that are remaining there are still there, and I see like lines outside the door, I mean, it just gives me a lot of joy just to see people happy that they're making money once again.
Which one's your parents' business so we can go eat there this week?
Yes.
Oh.
Sun Bakery, right? Yep. Shout out Sun Bakery. That's my aunt, actually. So, had to throw in the picture at the end, the mural. Yeah, and can we just please give a round of applause for Kiyoki and Don for all the work that they've done and still do in the community. So thank you all. Thank you.
And Han, too. Yeah, no, that's a really great question. As you saw in the video, all my friends were white, but like growing up. But no, for me personally, I definitely did see a handful of some of my closer friends actually reach out to me, connect with me to ask me how I was doing and, what they could do to support. So I saw a little bit of that.
You want me to answer? No, it's okay. I'm just giving you a hard time. Okay, so there was, I can't say that with my circle of friends, there was a paradigm shift of like what they thought versus what was really occurring. But I think that I saw a lot of conversations on like social media that some were starting to understand some of the issues, but some were very just staunchly like, it was created by China. And I mean, because there's even articles that came out, like they said they said that they researched it, and they think that it started in a lab in China and other things. So there's a lot of different misinformation that's coming out to say that, to continue the dialogue and the narrative that has created just these divisionary practices within all the different groups that have been impacted by quarantine and COVID and all that stuff. But the friends that I have, they already, I mean, and I know it's just because I'm very particular about the friends that I choose to be with. They're all very supportive of, they said, okay, we're gonna come down to Chinatown and show me the places to eat and show me where to go. And so I ended up becoming like a tour guide for Chinatown because I was always constantly taking friends to different places to eat and coffee. And now that I've been living in Chinatown for the last 2 years. Like it's been, even for me, it's like I'm being exposed to some of the smaller places that I've never been to before, which has been just an amazing experience in finding even some food that is outside of Honeycourt. So it's been great.
So to answer your question, I would say the reason I'm friends with some like my white friends is because they're already not as ignorant, I guess. You know, also I'm half white, so you know my dad's in the audience too. So what's up? But yeah, I mean personally, I would have to say I've had similar conversations surrounding the murals, surrounding anti-blackness in my classrooms, and one in particular, my photo media class at UW. And some of the discussions, even for them, they know like, hey, if I say this, I can get canceled, which is such an odd thing to say, and they still say it. So, you know, not to get into details and to specify what was said, I think for the people who are seeing the film, seeing art, and being like, you know, okay, I'm understanding the narrative, I'm understanding how to approach this as a white person outside of the community or even within the community, how to be respectful. I think it all starts with how we're presenting the message too, how to receive it, not being confrontational, but also respectful to the artists who made the murals, to the people who are also sharing the message on social media and beyond that. So I think it is a slow process. Even just watching, say, like this video, I'm not gonna imagine going to like my white friend or a white person and be like, or have you changed? That's also assuming that they aren't, you know, like, oh, hey, they're already respectful. You know, I don't want to essentialize, you know, all white people are bad, but, you know, look at history. But, hey, you know, yeah, that would be my answer for you, so.
And just to follow up to that too. So Jade Garden, the person that tried to cancel Jade Garden initially, right? That person was white, and they also understood the tension that exists between the black community and the Asian community. And they used that to propagate and create false narratives about what Jade Garden was doing and what they were about. And they created, and unfortunately, I mean, I love technology, but also technology can be used for really egregious purposes, and that's what they did. They created fake chats, they created fake pictures, and some of these fake chats that this person created between himself and Eric had some very derogatory language in there against the black community, and then he reposted this picture, and so he understood very well about not only the tension between blacks and Asian community, but also whites and Asian community, and because he was trying to troll Eric initially by saying something very derogatory. I think it was something like, well, at least I don't cook dog, or something like that. And then Eric took offense to that, of course, as I would too, and it became this bigger thing where he tried to get Jade Garden canceled. But fortunately, after the second news article broke about that happening, then we started seeing a lot of people from the black community coming out even more to support Jade Garden, which was great. So I can't say that even though there is a tension, we can't, as Han said, we can't over-essentialize and say that this is the feeling for all the black community or all of the white community. But certainly there are people that are out there that do believe a lot of the false narratives and not interested in hearing the counter-narrative and the truth.
All right. Thank you all for coming out today. And thank you, Ben, for taking care of the sound and lighting for the Rainier Arts Center. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, and if you haven't already, please feel free to grab lunch from downstairs. And we are also hosting a reception at Tea and Fa restaurant, 3330 Rainier Avenue South, and be there by 3 p.m. Yeah, but then again, 2:30. But yeah, thank you all for coming out again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.